The third way, nature necessitates it, nature makes it. This statement contains many impossibilities. We shall mention 3 of them by way of examples. First impossibility: if the art and creativity, which are discerning and wise, to be seen in beings and particularly in animate beings, are not attributed to the pen of divine determining and power of the pre-eternal Son, and instead are attributed to nature and force, which are blind, deaf, and unthinking, it becomes necessary that nature either should have present in everything machines and printing presses for their creation, or should include in everything power and wisdom enough to create and administer the universe. The reason for this is as follows. The sun's manifestations and reflections appear in all small fragments of glass and droplets on the face of the earth. If those miniature, reflected imaginary suns are not ascribed to the sun in the sky, it is necessary to accept the external existence of an actual sun in every tiny fragment of glass smaller than a match head, which possesses the sun's qualities and which, though small in size, bears profound meaning, and therefore to accept actual suns to the number of pieces of glass. In exactly the same way, if beings and animate creatures are not attributed directly to the manifestation of the pre-eternal Son's names, it becomes necessary to accept that in each being, and especially animate beings, there lies a nature, a force, or quite simply a God that will sustain an infinite power and will, and knowledge and wisdom. Such an idea is the most absurd and superstitious of all the impossibilities in the universe. It demonstrates that a man who attributes the art of the creator of the universe to imaginary, insignificant, unconscious nature is without doubt less conscious of the truth than an animal. Second impossibility: if beings which are most well-ordered and well-measured, wise and artistically fashioned, are not ascribed to one who is infinitely powerful and wise, and instead are attributed to nature, it becomes necessary for there to be present in every bit of soil as many factories and printing presses as there are in Europe, so that each bit of soil can be the means for the growth and formation of innumerable flowers and fruits, of which it is the place of origin and workshop. The seeds of flowers are sown in turn in a bowl of soil, which performs the duty of a flower pot for them. An ability is apparent in the bowl of soil that will give shapes and forms which differ greatly from one another to all the flowers sown in it. If that ability is not attributed to the all-glorious and all-powerful one, such a situation could not occur without there being in the bowl full of soil immaterial, different, and natural machines for each flower. That is because the matter of which seeds, like sperm and eggs, for example, consist is the same. That is, they consist of an orderless, formless, paste-like mixture of oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. Together with this, since air, water, heat, and light also are each simple, unconscious, and flow against everything in floods, the fact that the all different forms of those flowers emerge from the soil in a most well-ordered and artistic fashion self-evidently and necessarily requires that there are present in the soil, in the bowl, immaterial, miniature printing presses and factories to the number of presses and factories in Europe, so that they could weave this great number of living fabrics and thousands of various embroidered textiles. Thus, you can see how far the unbelieving thought of the naturalists has deviated from the realm of reason, And although brainless pretenders who imagine nature to be creator claim to be men of science and reason, see just how distant from reason and science is their thought, so that they have taken a superstition that is in no way possible, that is impossible, as a way for themselves. See this and laugh at them. If you ask, if such extraordinary impossibilities and insurmountable difficulties occur when beings are attributed to nature, how are those difficulties removed when they are attributed to the single and eternally besought one? And how is the difficult impossibility transformed into that easy necessity? The answer: we saw in the first impossibility that the manifestation of the sun's reflection displays its radiance and effect through miniature imaginary suns with complete ease and lack of trouble in everything from the minutest inanimate particle to the surface of the vastest ocean. If each particle's relationship with the sun is severed, it then becomes necessary to accept that the external existence of an actual sun could subsist, with a difficulty at the level of impossibility in each of those minute particles. Similarly, if each being is ascribed directly to the single and eternally besought one, everything necessary for each being can be conveyed to it through a connection and manifestation with an ease and facility that is at the level of necessity. If the connection is severed and each being reverts from its position as an official to being without duties, and is left to nature and its own devices, it then becomes necessary to suppose that, with 100,000 difficulties and obstacles that reach the degree of impossibility, blind nature possesses within it a power and wisdom with which to create and administer the universe so that it might bring into existence the wonderful machine of the being of an animate creature like a fly, which is a tiny index of the universe. This is impossible, not just once, but thousands of times over. In short, just as it is impossible and precluded for the necessarily existent one to have any partner or like in respect of his essence, so too is the interference of others in his dominicality and in his creation of beings impossible and precluded. As for the difficulties involved in the second impossibility, as is proved in many parts of the RİSALE-İ NUR, if all things are attributed to the single one of unity, all things become as easy and trouble-free as a single thing, whereas if they are attributed to causes and nature, a single thing becomes as difficult as all things. This has been demonstrated with numerous decisive proofs, and a summary of one of them is as follows. If a man is connected to a king through being a soldier or an official, by reason of the strength of that connection, he may perform duties far exceeding his own individual strength. He may, on occasion, capture another king in the name of his own king. For he himself does not carry the equipment and sources of strength necessary to carry out the duties and work he performs, nor is he compelled to do so. By reason of the connection, the king's treasuries and the army, which is behind him and is his point of support, carry his equipment and sources of strength. That is to say, the duties he performs may be as grand as the business of a king, and as tremendous as the actions of an army. Indeed, through being an official, an ant destroyed Pharaoh's palace. Through the connection, a fly killed Nimrod off. And through the connection, the seed of a pine the size of a grain of wheat produces all the parts of a huge pine tree. Were the connection to be severed, and the man discharged from his duties as an official, he would be compelled to carry the equipment and sources of strength necessary for his work himself. He would then only be able to perform duties in accordance with the sources of strength and ammunition that he was able to carry. If he was to be required in this situation to carry out his duties with the extreme ease of the first situation, it would be necessary to load on his back the sources of an army's strength and the arsenals and munitions factories of a king. Even clowns who invent stories and superstitions to make people laugh would be ashamed at this fanciful idea. In short, to attribute all beings to the necessarily existent one is so easy as to be necessary, while to attribute their creation to nature is so difficult as to be impossible and outside the realm of reason. Third impossibility. The following two comparisons, which are included in other parts of the RİSALE-İ NUR, explain this impossibility. A wild savage entered a palace which had been built in an empty desert, and completed and adorned with all the fruits of civilization. He cast an eye over its interior and saw thousands of well-ordered and artistically fashioned objects. Because of his boorishness and lack of intelligence, he said, no one from outside had a hand in this. One of the objects from inside must have made this palace together with all of its contents, and started to investigate. However, whatever he looked at, even his untaught intelligence could not fathom out how it had made those things. Later, he saw a notebook in which had been written the plan and program of the palace's construction, an index of its contents, and the rules of its administration. For sure, the notebook too, which was without hand, eye, or implement, like the rest of the objects in the palace, was completely lacking the ability to construct and decorate the palace. But since he saw that in comparison with all the other things, the notebook was related to the whole palace by reason of its including all its theoretical laws, he was obliged to say, there, it is this notebook that has organized, ordered, and adorned this palace, and has fashioned all these objects and set them in their places. He transformed his uncouthness into ludicrous jabber. Thus, exactly like this comparison, a boor who subscribed to naturalist thought, which denies Allah, entered the palace of the universe, which is infinitely more well-ordered, more perfect, and everywhere full of miraculous instances of wisdom than the palace in the comparison. Not thinking that it was the work of art of the necessarily existent one, who is outside the sphere of contingency, and shunning that idea, he saw a collection of the laws of divine practice and an index of dominical art, which are like a slate for writing and erasing of divine determining in the sphere of contingency, and like a constantly changing notebook for the laws of the functioning of divine power, and are extremely mistakenly and erroneously given the name nature. And he said, these things require a cause, and nothing else appears to have the relationship with everything like this notebook has. It is true that reason will in no way accept that this unseeing, unconscious, and powerless notebook could carry out this creation, which is the work of an absolute dominicality and requires infinite power. But since I do not recognize the eternal maker, the most plausible explanation is to say the notebook made it, and makes it. So I shall say that, to which we reply, O you mistaken unfortunate, your foolishness exceeds anything imaginable. Lift your head out of the swamp of nature and look beyond yourself. See an all-glorious maker to whom all beings, from particles to planets, testify with their different tongues and whom they indicate with their fingers. Behold the manifestation of the pre-eternal inscriber, who fashions the palace and who writes its program in the notebook. Study his decree, listen to the Quran, be delivered from your delirious raving. Second comparison. A rustic bumpkin entered the bounds of a splendid palace and saw there the uniform actions of an extremely well-disciplined army carrying out its drill. He observed a battalion, a regiment, and a division standing to attention, stand at ease and march, and open fire when commanded as though they were a single private. Since his rude, uncultured mind could not comprehend, so denied that a commander had been given command by the country's laws and by a royal decree, he imagined that the soldiers were attached to one another with strings. He thought of what wonderful string it must be, and was amazed. Later, he continued on his way till he came upon a magnificent mosque like Hagia Sophia. He entered it at the time of Friday prayer and watched the congregation of Muslims rising, bowing, prostrating, and sitting at the sound of man's voice. Since he did not understand the Sharia, which consists of a collection of immaterial, revealed laws, nor the immaterial rules proceeding from the lawgiver's command, he fancied the congregation to be bound to one another by physical string, and that this wonderful string had subjected them and was making them move like puppets. And coming up with this idea, which is so ridiculous as to make the most ignorant roar with laughter, he went on his way. Exactly like this comparison, an atheist who subscribed to materialist thought, which is denial and pure brutishness, entered the universe, which is a splendid barracks of the monarch of pre-eternity and post-eternity for his innumerable forces, and a well-ordered mosque of that pre-eternal all-worshipped one. He imagined the immaterial laws of the ordering of the universe, which proceed from the pre-eternal monarch's wisdom, each to have material and physical existence, and supposed the theoretical laws of the sovereignty of dominicality and the rules and ordinances of the greater Sharia, the Sharia of creation, which are immaterial and exist only as knowledge, each to have external, material, and physical existence. But to set up in place of divine power those laws which proceed from the divine attributes of knowledge and speech and only exist as knowledge, and to attribute creation to them, then to attach the name nature to them, and to deem force, which is merely a manifestation of dominical power, to be an independent, almighty possessor of power, is 1,000 times more low-fallen ignorance than the ignorance in the comparison. In short, the imaginary and insubstantial thing that naturalists call nature, if it has an external reality, can at the very most be work of art. It cannot be the artist. It is an embroidery and cannot be the embroiderer. It is a set of decrees. It cannot be the issuer of the decrees. It is a body of the laws of creation and cannot be the lawgiver. It is but a created screen to the dignity of Allah and cannot be the creator. It is passive and created and cannot be a creative maker. It is a law, not a power, and cannot possess power. It is the recipient and cannot be the source. To conclude, since beings exist, and as was stated at the beginning of this treatise, reason cannot think of a way to explain the existence of beings apart from the forementioned, 3 of which were decisively proved through 3 clear impossibilities to be invalid and absurd, then necessarily and self-evidently the way of divine unity, which is the 4th way, is proved in a conclusive manner. The 4th way, in accordance with the verse quoted at the beginning, "Is there any doubt about Allah, creator of the heavens and the earth?" demonstrates clearly, so that there can be no doubt or hesitation, the divinity of the necessarily existent one, and that all things issue directly from the hand of his power, and that the heavens and the earth are under his sway.